Welcome back to the Optimized Equine Podcast. I'm your host, Tamara Lee Barrett. Today's guest has a story that will resonate with anyone who's ever felt more at home with horses than anywhere else. Rachel Windchaser grew up in England surrounded by horses, not just as a hobby, but as a way of life. As a child who struggled with communication, she found her voice with horses who gave her the space to just be. Rachel's journey has taken her from England to Spain, where she now lives off-grid with a rare herd of Spanish Mustangs, horses so undiluted in their nature that they helped her discover how much she didn't yet know. These aren't wild horses, but they're about as close to their original state as domestic horses can be, and they've taught Rachel that understanding the true nature of the horse changes everything. In this conversation, we dive into what it means to truly see our horses, why boundaries aren't the enemy of connection, and how slowing down enough to understand both our nature and theirs can transform our relationships. Rachel also shares about her book, The Principles of Rewilding, Horsemanship from Nature, and her work helping people find their way back to authentic communication and connection with horses. This episode offers a refreshing perspective on what's possible when we remember how to be. You can follow Rachel Windchaser and Windchaser Ranch on social media, or visit her website at rewild.windchaserranch.com to learn more about her work. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and rate Optimized Equine Podcast. Follow our socials and stay connected at tamerleebarrett.com. Without further ado, let's get into it. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today, Rachel. We've spoken before in a different context, but I really look forward to this opportunity to chat with you more because I love the things we did speak about. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got there? And
Sure.
I'm sure I will interrupt you and ask questions as we go, but let's go with that. And I know it might be a big piece of it, and that's totally great. I love that stuff.
Okay. Well, it is a lifetime, so it might take a while.
That's quite all right.
I grew up with horses. In fact, I don't remember a day when horses were not part of my everyday life. It was something that was just always there. We had a tradition of horses in the family, and it was part of my identity. And the horses became very big for me because as a child, I found communication really difficult. I found finding words really difficult. And I even do that today. Like if I'm on a roll, all of a sudden, it's like my brain freezes and I can't find the words that I want to say, except when I was around the horses. When I was around the horses, I could talk to them for hours. And I know that's, it's quite a cliche, children, little girls talking to their ponies. But it was more than that because it became part of the way that I could feel safe in myself and understand that I could communicate. So much of my poor communication I was self-silencing because it was very difficult for people helping me. They would try and help me finish the sentence, which was in a way even more frustrating because 9 times out of 10 it'd be wrong, where the horses never did that. They gave me the space to pause and to communicate and to talk and to just be. And I think jumping ahead really quickly, really a lot, that is where I am today with how I am around the horses today and what I teach. So as a child, it became almost fundamental that I lived with horses. And I was really lucky as well because my dad was a very natural human being. And we talk about natural horsemanship, which is in itself a slight juxtaposition that doesn't work for me. But we were taught, because of our tradition, that horses came first. They ate before we did, they drank before we did, they were put up before we were, they were cared for before we were as children. We were very natural in the way we were with them, and in fact, almost feral. And I can remember a conversation I had with my dad. I think I couldn't have been more than, say, 6 or 7. I was really little. And I ran into where my dad was sitting, and he was in this big old armchair with his glass of whiskey and his big headphones on, listening to his country music. And he knew, as soon as he saw me, he knew, oh my God, this is it. I'm going to have to put everything down and listen to her. And I jumped on his knee and I was saying, oh, my pony's not listening to me. My pony's not listening to me. And he just said, well, are you asking the right questions? And I said, absolutely, I'm asking the right questions. And he said, okay, then you're asking them at the wrong time. And if you can imagine for a 6-year-old, those sort of things are being, floated around now. That's how I was brought up around horses. And what was really, really funny is that he pulled out the jack of his old stereo and it was playing The Gambler. I don't know if you know that song. So, you know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away. So it was so relative. It was just, I'll never forget it. So he stuffed the jack back in and I ran out and he just knew that I won't see her until, I'll go and collect her from the field. So I feel I had one of the best educators in my life, which was my dad. And although, as you grow up, life takes over, domesticity takes over, you start to see other things happening and you feel, I wonder if that's the right way. I wonder if I should be doing that. And I wonder if I should be doing the other. But eventually it all comes down to asking the right questions at the right time. And that is something that I will always cherish, the education that I had as a child. The time I had with my horses, the playing. I mean, we had them, they were so integral in our lives that instead of like grabbing a bike to go to the park, we would take one of the ponies. It was, we were that, it was that ingrained in our lives. That's just how it was. And it stayed with me throughout, even though there's been slight detours to, high fashion and climbing and other things in my life. But the horses have always felt like home. They've always brought me back to where I am now, actually, because even now I feel so much contentment and safety in where I am now with this herd of Spanish Mustangs that, I feel that this is home. Less method, more looking out than looking in. And so, I started very young.
That's such a great story. I feel like that's a lesson, well, a couple of lessons there that so many people do learn from horses, but so rarely at that age. Most of us
Yeah,
are talking about that way into our adult lives, that we've finally learned this lesson from our
yeah,
horses and that kind of a thing. And for me, I mean, what I take from that is the selflessness part, and what that really means and looks like in our daily lives and in riding and whatnot, if that's something someone's doing. And also in, like, when you talk about asking the question at the right time, it's putting responsibility and, in a way, control back on you. And that's something I think a lot of people don't learn until way
yeah.
later in life.
It all starts with us.
Yeah, and you don't know the right time unless you're reading the room, reading your horse, that whole thing. Again, so many people start horsing and are taught it in a way from such a young age. I know I was,
Mm.
of not reading your horse. We would say you are, but no one is. You're just like doing the thing. And I feel like that sounds like such a simple way that he taught you, like, yeah, no, gotta
Yeah,
bring it back to you and talk to your horse about it. you
yeah. It
know
was, I mean,
so
even today, I come across the simple thing of leading your horse is something it that isn't approached with most people when they learn. It was something I was talking about the other day as well, that when you go and start learning to ride, you want to be around horses. And fundamentally, people want to ride, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love to ride my horses. But it's usually prepared, that you turn up and the horse is prepared for you. It might be the second or third lesson of the day for them. You start learning about horses sat on their back as opposed to on the ground. And the simple act of leading your horse is now having to be taught as opposed to something that is natural.
Mhm.
is as opposed to something of just being around them. And that is something that I was very lucky to have, always being around them and being able to be part of their conversations and part of their awareness and part of their environment.
That's great. Now, where did you grow up? Where was this?
This was in England. This was in
Okay.
England.
Okay, because I know
I
you're not
grew up.
there now, so fill us in a little bit on
No.
that
So
gap there.
yeah, I moved to Spain. I mean, I live in Spain now, and I actually moved to Spain when I was about 18, 19. It was a really random decision. Did work with Spanish horses. You know, that was, got here, and I mean, I had a job because we need to eat, but to sort of feed my habit, and started working around Spanish horses. And then I had a brief time in Italy, but I knew it was very strange. When I moved to Spain, I couldn't speak Spanish. I had no idea of the country, and I don't know why. The moment I landed on the soil, I felt this is home. This is the country I should be in. And it was very much deep. It was a really deep feeling. Then, like I say, I moved over to Italy and there was a whole side of reining and working with reining horses, etc. But I knew I had to come home to Spain. When I say home, it was always Spain. It was never England, although part of my family's Irish, and it was never Ireland, which is where the horse side comes in. It was always Spain as being home. And so I knew I had to return here. So when I returned, I started looking for Spanish horses because they are amazing. Spanish horses are amazing. For me, I think they're incredible minds. But I couldn't really find the right way of going about it because I knew what I needed was not a highly schooled horse. I just wanted that more native feeling. And then I came across the Spanish Mustangs. And the Spanish Mustangs are a rare breed that were taken to America by the conquistadors of Spain back in 1460 or whatever. And they're actually lost to Spain. They don't exist anymore here. And I think there's about 2,000 left in the world. So I had this, again, another, wow, this is what I'm going to do, idea of creating a preserve and education centre for the Spanish Mustangs and bring them home. And that feeling of home that I felt here in Spain, I wanted to give them. I wanted to bring home this horse. So I did some research and I found one. There's a preserve in the UK. There's actually one in France, but I went to the UK to look for these horses, and I found Charlie, which is the reason why we exist here. And then Charlie had a son, with a beautiful mare, and so he was going to be our foundation stallion because at that point Charlie was gelded. Fortunately, he passed away. So in the meantime, I'd gotten 2 mares to begin this whole project. So I ended up with a gelding and 2 mares, which is really a poor show when you want to do a preservation. There's not a lot you can do with that.
It's only going to go so far, isn't it?
It is. So I contacted the American preservation and actually imported a stallion over from America. And so we started the breeding program and looking at the preservation and turning this space into an educational centre. That was the idea. What I didn't realise was it wouldn't be me educating. It would be them. The Spanish Mustang is so undiluted as a horse. They're not wild. They're not even feral. These horses are domestic like any other horse in their setup and in their environment. Although they do have a massive half a mountain and a load of forest, they have a lot of space. They're still domesticated. I am still responsible for their care. I still make sure their hooves are right, their teeth are right, and they have enough space to move. But there's fencing, so they're not wild horses. But because they're so close to their original state, they brought to me, and I thought I had a natural upbringing, which I did, and I thought I knew the nature of the horse and how a horse feels and communicates, and I was in kindergarten. These guys said, okay, now you have to go to university.
Mm-hmm.
So the education side of it, and what has brought me back into this, and this was the big shift. The big shift was living with them daily and walking out and communicating with them. Big shift was respect my nature, understand my nature. And when you understand that, everything will change. And boy, did it. Boy, did it. And the nature of the horse, and horsemanship from nature is my program now, because by understanding the horse's nature, they gave me an open door, a permission, if you like, to understand my nature, particularly as a child and all the difficulties of communication, and letting me understand that actually I had no problem communicating on a fundamental level with this being on a nature-based dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
which, this is going to sound a little bit, which if you think about it, is such a pure communication that so many people miss. Because as a domestic being, as we are, the human being is so domesticated and so diluted and so veiled in so many things and particularly nowadays with so much going on, we miss the fact that actually we're a mammal. And to understand the nature of that animal, that mammal, we are going to be able to connect with, in our case, in my case, with the horses in our lives, and be able to give them space to communicate with us. Because fundamentally, understanding changes everything, no matter what we're doing, or whether it's horses or anything, but just to be able to understand. And it allowed me to truly drop all systems, all techniques, all rigidity, all single paths. There's multiple paths. There's right and wrong in everything about horses. But when we start to close off and follow one single path, well, we're going to miss so much of life around our horses. And when we do that, ultimately, it's a balance of meeting their needs and understanding what they need, and meeting our desires and understanding what we want, and bringing those two together so the two of us, horse and human, can collaborate. Because again, people say, well, if I follow this path of horsemanship from nature, rewilding, does that mean I can't ride my horses? Does that mean I can't go to competitions? It doesn't mean any of that. It means approaching your life with your horse in a way that they understand you and you understand them, so that it can be a collaboration. I mean, it's a ridiculous thought that you can't ride your horse to a degree, because I would say 80% of people don't have land enough to allow horses to move enough. And movement is such an important factor in their mental health, in their well-being. They need to move. They need to move. As we do, we need to move. When you're sedentary for too long, you start getting frustrated, right? And it's the same for the horses. So if you can't provide that, which 80% of the people can't, you need to help them move. You need to go with them. So yes, ride your horse, but ride not as a passenger, ride with them. Part of the conversation, part of the dialogue, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. And it's understanding those parts of the nature of a human, and it's okay to have desires and wants as long as they meet the needs of the horse, so that they can be a horse. And that is one fundamental lesson that I was given early on with these guys, that don't show up with a technique. Show up as you are, the human being you are, the mammal you are, understand what we share, because we share so much with them, and celebrate that, but respect the differences. And I think, that is what these guys have really taught me within that whole education that they've given me over the last 10 years, I think. 10 years, yeah. Okay.
So now when you moved to Spain, did you do that? You did that alone, or was that with your family?
No, alone.
Did it alone?
No.
And so were you already exposed to the Spanish horses and went there for that, or just ended up there
No.
and that's where you found them?
No, I found the Spanish horses in Spain. I grew up with the typical Welsh pony,
Hmm.
an Exmoor. I did have an amazing Hanoverian Anglo cross. Yeah, so from one pony at 3, my own pony turned up. My dad literally went, right, now get on with it, obviously with help. By the time I was sort of around that 16, 17, I had 4 of my own, which was this little mini herd. And then, unfortunately, my dad got sick, and it was a whole change in how we could be. We could not be so feral anymore. And I think it was a struggle for me to understand that. I moved to Spain. I landed in Spain on the 6th of January, which is King's Day, so nothing was open. I managed to secure a little apartment. I turned up at this little apartment, and within half an hour, I had bread, tomatoes, wine. It was a bit overwhelming, actually, to a point, but it was amazing. And I just felt, good God, this is so incredible. These are so amazing human beings. But I went into the footwear industry. So I became a footwear designer because I thought, I like shoes, why not? That'll help pay for my bills. And then I discovered the Spanish horses, because there's life, and then there's life without horses, and I can't have that one. I need this life.
Gotcha. Okay, so you were meant for Spain for a number of reasons, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Now you also, I think I heard you say that you did reining in Italy. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, I was,
Yes.
when I was in Italy, I moved to Italy for footwear, for the
Uh-huh.
shoes. I was approached by a company, and they said, what will it take to take you there? And I picked a completely ridiculous number out of a hat, thinking they'll never say yes, because it wasn't really my dream to go and live in Italy. And they said yes, which was great. And I did spend a number of years horseless. And it got to a point where I was missing something so fundamental in my life that I was struggling to find happiness, like true happiness. And then, of course, it's going to sound like a real sad sob story. Then my mum passed away, because my dad passed away years ago. Then my mum passed away, and I was caring for her. And she said 2 things before she died, literally the night before she died. One was, why are you not in Spain? And the other one was, why don't you have a horse? Which was a bit, wow. Anyway, slight forward, still in Italy, didn't know how to find joy and happiness. And my partner said to me, I think he was getting a bit fed up with me, he said, what will it take to make you happy? And I said, a horse. So immediately we started looking for a place that I could connect with horses, because obviously I didn't have one of my own at the time. Came across this space, and it was a reining yard. But it seemed really quite natural. It seemed okay. And the moment, oh my God, the moment I walked into that area and smelt the horse, that smell does something to you, doesn't it? And I suddenly felt lighter and happier. Just that, the aroma alone, And so, yes, I did get connected to a reining. I didn't do the reining. I was more of a moral compass,
See,
where
well, needed,
I would,
a needed role.
yeah, I was doing checks and balances. And at one point, though, it got so difficult, because no matter what I did, every time the season started, they were taken away and asked to perform. And it isn't easy for them. And it got me thinking. I knew I wasn't going to stay in Italy, so I was already planning on leaving. And I thought to myself, this is beginning to be a little bit like the shutdown horse that you unlock and abandon. That almost being shut down is a safer space for them because it's familiar. And I can't keep opening the door and shutting it again, and opening the door and shutting it again. So I did extract myself from there, and then left and moved to Spain.
There you go. Well, do you want to tell us a bit more about the work you do with your herd now?
Mm.
You want to tell us about your herd now?
Yeah. So here we have a small herd of 5, which I guess calling it a herd is a very grand, people will tell you off for that and say, oh, you should call it a group. It's only a herd when it gets to a certain size. It's my herd. We have the 2 mares, Chinook Silverwind and Cheyenne Promise. And we have our foundation stallion, which is Champagne High. He's the only breeding Champagne Spanish Mustang outside of America at the moment. And then we have our first foal, which is Caminando con Sueños, which means walking with dreams. Because for me, I am walking a dream here. I'm under no disillusion that I am very privileged. It's hard. It's hard life. It's a hard life. It's physically hard. It's mentally hard. It's emotionally hard. But God, it's also a dream. And he is the first Spanish Mustang foal to touch Spanish soil in about 200 to 300 years. It is a slow process because I'm not breeding to make money. I'm breeding good stock so that we can create horses that we have and that we can leave a legacy with. And of course, there's Lakota, my beautiful Charlie, who started it all. When I went to meet him, I'd actually gone to see a mare because I had this sort of inkling and I thought, well, a gelding's not really the right choice for me because I'd like to bring them to Spain and expand. So I actually went to look at a mare. But this horse, oh my God, I walked past he was in this big area and I walked field, kept very naturally. And I walked past the gate and he did that nicker, And I looked at him, I thought, oh, you're a handsome fella. It's such a shame you're a gelding. Oh, God, you're amazing. And I walked past him again and he did exactly the same thing. And then I left and came back a couple of days later and I said, I'd like to go and have a look at him if you don't mind. And I went in and he came up to me and he planted his muzzle on my chest and just took a deep breath and weighted his head into my chest. And I just looked around and I said, this is it. This is the one. This is the one. I don't care about the future right now. This is who I need to connect with. Or he's connected. He said, you're taking me home. Wherever it is, I'm coming home with you. And then we discovered that, we knew that he had already bred and there was a foal on the way. And either way, whether it was a girl or a boy, that would have been the next step. They spend a lot of time teaching me how to be. And they spend a lot of time teaching other people how to be. So we work with them and I work with other people with them, particularly at the walk, either in hand or ridden, but mainly to begin with in hand and going on long forage walks. We're very lucky. We live in a very natural area. We have mountains and forests behind us that just go on forever. And it is about combining the understanding of the nature of the horse. And I have people come here that are actually really, high competitive people, highly ranked people that are so amazed by the shift in them and the shift in the way that they are able to then connect with their own horses and the progress they make through that change, through that communication. And they have obviously been very fundamental in all the foundations that I do. And obviously the book that I wrote is basically a tribute to them and what they've taught me. And the plan is this year is to finalize the documentation as a non-profit so that we can really start expanding and introducing much more of the educational side of it. Which I think is really important.
Now, as far as like the genetics of your horses, and obviously this was being tracked somewhere, not Spain, but somewhere before you got into it. How long has that been going on? What was the interest for someone outside of Spain to be preserving it? What would they say?
Well, after obviously the conquistadors turned up with them, and then they brought other horses as well. So they brought the heavy horses and they brought the fast horse, the thoroughbreds, not just these pure Spanish stock. And over time, obviously, they were taken, the Native Americans, by the original people of America, by the indigenous people of America. And one of the names that they carry is the Indian pony. So all the horses I have here are connected to a tribe. So I have Lakota and Sioux, which is more or less the same thing. I have Choctaw, and I have Chinook, who is from the north. The Chinook Winds, part of the Chinook tribes. And what is fascinating is that as they have developed and been domesticated and been absorbed into the Native Americans, they've all taken on a slightly different physicality. There is a standard, a standard and a height standard, but you will get quite heavy. Like Charlie's quite thunderous because he's come from much more of a nomad, and you have Champagne High is much finer because they were much more for speed, but they're all the same genetically, if you like. Well, they are. So when the Industrial Revolution took over, obviously the horses were just thrown out. They were given out into the lands, and all of them, the heavy horses, the high horses, the fast horses, these Spanish horses. And that's why, just on a side note, the BLM Mustangs, which you obviously are aware of, are a mixture of all of the previous breeds that were brought over by either the conquistadors or by the English, because they brought a lot of the thoroughbreds and a lot more of the heavier horses. So that's why you get a whole mix in there. But there is Spanish in there as well. But because these horses are so hardy and so square, so they can, I don't recommend it, but theoretically they can carry a lot more weight because the bridge is shorter. So they're a much more compact horse. They were the preferred horse for ranching. And then the Brislawns, a family of Brislawns, he's the one that started the original preservation of them. He realized that they were becoming more and more lost, more and more endangered. There was fewer about. He couldn't find a good horse that he needed to work with. So he began the preservation. He went and got a stallion and 2 mares, I think. Monty was his first stallion and a couple of mares, and started breeding and started his the Spanish Mustang registration, preservation and breeding program, which his original horses are still part of. There's a guy called Adam who took on the herd because they were passed down through his whole family, and he ended up with the daughter, and then when she wanted to retire, there was nowhere. He took this whole herd on, and they're still there. They're still, and they were called the Cayuse herd, and they're still in America. They're still part of the preservation. So yeah, it was all down. There's a small pockets of these horses in America. They are, like I say, quite connected. There's the Choctaw, and then there's the Corolla. They're a big part of it. So they're all. Colonial Spanish Mustang is almost like an umbrella term for all these tiny pockets of horses.
I was going to ask if there was a registry. It sounds like
Yes.
there is. So that registry is tracking a lot of things, it sounds like, but it's mentioning the tribes you're talking about.
Whenever you register a horse, either with the Spanish Mustang Registry or the Horse of America, there's 2 branches. There's the Horse of America. You get back on there's the strains. So you know how much Choctaw, you know how much Ute, you know how much Lakota, you know how much Corolla, Outer Banks, because they're all part of that same sort of family. So you can say, okay, my horse here is 100% Choctaw, or, whatever. So yeah, it is tracked. The percentage of the strain within the horse is tracked as well.
Cool. That is really cool. Now, just because I have a little history with it myself, and now I'm curious, where do the Spanish barbs tie into all this? Hopefully I'm not opening a can of worms, but...
No. Well, some say it is just another name for the same horse, because there is the Spanish barb, and of course then there is the African barb, and so they are all connected. So the Spanish Barb Association is still part of the colonial Spanish
I
Mustang,
see. Okay.
the colonial Spanish Barb. The Kiger horses is completely different. They are slightly apart, and obviously the Sorayas are Portuguese, but it's still part of that same family.
Gotcha. Very interesting. Definitely a rabbit hole. I'm
Yeah,
sure
it
you
is.
can go deep into. um, Now, I like to talk about corner turners. Corner turners are people, horses, events, things that change our trajectory,
Mm-hmm.
affect our lives and our path. You've definitely mentioned some things that I would call corner turners. Are there any other big corner turners that come to mind? Horses, people, events, moves, things like that?
A big shift was meeting a woman called Mary Corning. I don't know if you know her.
I know of her. I don't know a ton about her.
Yeah. I've never met her, but it was definitely in a phase of my life that she reached out, or I reached out to her. I can't remember. I think she reached out to me and just said, "Do you want to have a chat?" And I'm not good at saying yes. I'm better at saying no. My go-to is no, let's think about it. And then, particularly with people, right? Particularly with people,
Hmm.
I still have that sense of slight guarding. Do I communicate here or not? I'm better, as you can see, but there's still part of that.
Thanks to
Um,
horses, I'm sure you would say. So I know I
absolutely,
would.
absolutely. But I said yes. And we started talking. Don't understand half the stuff she says. I mean, she's incredible. Her mind is incredible. But she helped me understand that being you is okay. Now, with people. So her help with me was not when I'm the natural of being around the horses, things just change for me. I relax. I'm a fidget. I don't fidget around the horses. I sometimes get a restless leg. I don't around the horses. It's just a complete shift in my inner self. Okay, how I am in my inner self. It's like everything gets dialed down. With people, it gets dialed up, and I don't know. And anyway, she's helped me with that. So yeah, Mary has been pretty fundamental in my ability to understand it's okay around human beings to be okay, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. The biggest shift is living with these horses, these Spanish Mustangs. That has been the number one shift in me, I think. Not just as a horsewoman, but as a human being and understanding nature and environment. And I think moving here to this land to being land based, so we are off grid, we are of the land, we are guided by the land, we are guided by the weather on how we manage the land and how we live in the land. Yeah, that understanding our own domesticity and the restrictions it puts on us as human beings on how to understand that it's bigger than this. It's more
Hmm.
important than this. That nature, without nature, there is nothing. Without understanding nature, there's no way forward. And that not just talking about trees and plants is nice, to be able to understand so much about your environment that you open the door and you walk out and okay, today it's not going to rain because you can hear the certain birds are singing and they don't come out when it's going to rain, for example. But the nature of you, the nature of the horse, and knowing when you understand that, how it completely puts you into a space of serenity. Because
Hmm.
understanding yourself and understanding your place within the environment helps you with all the difficulties. Because when we get frustrated and when we get angry, through frustration. Everything narrows. But if we can understand that actually, if we just could broaden that, we're going to pick up all those tiny little aspects on either side of what we're actually trying to fix now. And it's not about fixing, it's not about solving, it's about understanding. Because once you understand it, there's nothing to fix. There's just progress. Whether it's in life, whether it's horses, whether it's with friendships, whether it's relationships, it doesn't matter. You understand it, there's nothing to fix. There's just understanding. So yeah, that would be one big one. The horses, obviously, and moving to Spain was pretty big, which is strange because I don't really like change very much, but I managed to create massive changes in my life at the same time.
What do you think it is that sparked you to just up and move to Spain by yourself then? If you don't like change and that kind of thing, where'd it come from?
I am incredibly self-competitive, and it was really hard. It was really hard to do. It wasn't easy. It wasn't like, hey, I'm off.
Yeah.
But I knew fundamentally I had to do it. I don't know why. I can't tell you why. I knew I had to do it. I was at a stage where, and I had a boyfriend at the time, and I said, you come, great. If you don't, I'm still going. I don't know. I can't tell you
Yeah,
specifically. I just knew I had arrived at a point where I had to.
that's great. Well, thank goodness you listened. Now, did you ever compete? Sounded like you didn't compete when you were at the reining place. Was that a thing you ever had a
No,
desire to do?
no.
Do you think that that desire never came up because of that foundation and stuff you were telling us about from your dad, where you just didn't feel the need to? I think some people don't have a purpose, or like they don't know what else to do with a horse besides an activity, you
Yeah.
know,
Um,
for various reasons.
I think, yes, that it seemed a lot of hard work that got you what? So when
Mhm.
we were little, when we were younger, yes, we would go to local gymkhanas and stuff, but we were the kids that turned up because we rode there. Like we wouldn't be going anywhere that was too far out,
Mhm.
over the other side of the country. No, they had to be pretty local. And we'd turn up, we'd ride there, and our horses were a bit dirty and we were a little bit scruffy. And I just look around and there'd be these people with talcum powder and getting upset that the horse had bumped into a bit of mud and stuff. And it didn't compute. I didn't
Mhm.
understand. I was saying, it was like, where's the joy in that for you and the horse? There's no fun in that. It just seemed so rigid. And so yeah, we would ride there, and I did enter. I did enter the best turnout once with my beautiful little chestnut Arab mare cross something, and we came third. So we got a ribbon. There was only three of us, so I had a chance. And I remember the guy saying, yes, this piece doesn't match this piece. And because, my dad would turn up with a bag of leathers and say, here, go and make a bridle, do what you want, whatever. So it was not, no, competing was never a priority. And as I got older, the lack of understanding where the joy was turned into much more of the why. I was a very much, well, why? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And those answers made me think that isn't a partnership when the competition is more important than how you or your horse is feeling. And I put the individual in there as well. And I am horse first, I put the horse first always. And it's important how they're feeling. But I wonder sometimes if people are competing when they're not really wanting to, particularly as children. and they'd just rather hang out. And when you get into a very competitive situation, it doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't. I don't see where the win is. Winning is important in life. We should all have small wins all through life, daily. They give you motivation, they give you boosts. But what is a win when it comes at such a cost that anything you gain from it, whether it's a dopamine hit or just general feeling good or the praise, etc., costs more on the backside? So, yeah, I win, but the losses sort of negate it. So I win every day. I win every day. I have small wins every day. The moment I observe something new, or I get a new lesson, or I open somebody's mind to start considering their nature, the horse's nature, I win. I'm constantly winning. I get things like this. This is a piece of art that somebody sent me. That's more than enough.
Right. There's a lot of people that don't have access to horses unless they go sign up for a horse sport. And
Yeah.
there is no introduction of, or even awareness or discussion about any other way to be. Maybe you know that there's English and Western, or maybe some different details like that, but at the end of the day, like, very rarely at that point, for a whole lot of reasons, is someone going to be like, and by the way, some people just own horses and hang out with them and they're friends. Like, nobody's saying that in those
Yeah,
environments. But I think that's changing so much now,
it
with
is.
a lot of things, and people like you talking about this kind of stuff. It's a huge deal, and I think it's really great. And that's just for the record. For anyone who has not listened to other episodes, I am not anti-competition. I think competition needs to be reminded and balanced out by this other side, because it's,
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not anti-competition, like I said earlier. I have competitors come to try and reconnect to the reason why they're doing what they're doing in the first place, and that's what I mean by you can win all you like, but if the cost isn't if the cost is too high, the win means nothing. And if we do want to continue to compete, things have to change, because otherwise it's going to be taken out of our hands. And I say ours, even though I'm not a competitor. If there is no change, if there is no willingness to evolve, it's about evolution. You either evolve or you become extinct. That's purely what will happen. Evolve into somebody that understands the horse and is able to compete at a level that the horse isn't being pushed beyond capacity, beyond threshold, physically, mentally, and emotionally, or it will be taken out of your hands and you'll become extinct and there will be no competition. And I don't want to see that, because that is not going to do the horses any favors either.
yeah, I was
There
going to
is
say, I
always
think
value.
there's plenty of people that would say, well, who cares if there's no competition? Better for it. Well, actually, what comes after that is no horses. That's why, you know?
Exactly.
So that's why. And there's no need to throw the whole thing out when there's so much benefit that could come from it. If we can do, like you said, if we can evolve it, gosh, there's so much stuff that can come from it. We don't have to throw it out. We can't throw it out.
Not at all.
Anyway, yeah. Now, tell me, you mentioned your book. Tell me what your book is called, and I'd love to hear about it. And I'd also love to hear a bit about what it was like writing it. I'm sure that was a process.
Yeah, it was. So the book is The Principles of Rewilding, Horsemanship from Nature. And it isn't obviously a technique book, it's not a method book. It is about remembering how to be and developing a sense of awareness about the horse and about ourselves. There's 11 chapters and it's 11 principles, and it's an invitation to better, I keep using this word, a better understanding. And I think if we can have a core belief, a fundamental core feeling through our interactions with our horses, we are going to start that evolution that we talked about. And this book, it's not a very big book, but it's written based on my experiences with the horses, with particularly the Spanish Mustangs, and how they asked me to remember how I was as a child without it being cliche. It's more about being curious, being open-hearted, and willing to understand what they're trying to say. And I think writing the book was a little bit like that because, as I said at the beginning, communication was really difficult for me as a child. I wasn't academic. I wasn't expected to do anything like this at all. And for years I lived with that. I was given it and I held on to it as my identity, as somebody that doesn't do words, particularly the written word, never mind the spoken word. So when I began writing notes, they literally were with the horses. I would sit and I would write these little notes, and then I just tuck them away. And I sort of started putting them together, and it wasn't ever going to be published. It wasn't a process of, I'm going to write a book. This was just, this is how this is making me feel. This is what is making sense, but I need to write it down, and giving my permission to be that person that could write it down. So when I put it all together, a friend of mine was talking, I asked a friend of mine to read it, and she said, you've got to publish this. You have to absolutely publish this. This is just phenomenal. It's not even, in fact, a couple of people who've bought it have said, if you take the word horse out, it could be a book for humans, for human relationships and human development. And I sort of went, oh God. So I did, I self-published it. And it has been, this here is one of your corner turns, or whatever you called them, this, because it gave me so much validation in the moment, which we all need. This is a big win for me. This was a big win. And it underlined that the path I'm on, for me, and luckily for my clients and for the students that come along, is the right one. Because the reaction to it was just incredible. I think my favourite note from somebody was, if only I'd had this book before I'd ever touched a horse, how different my horsemanship would be. And you can't get better than that. You can't get better than that. So yes, it was huge because it was a very vulnerable, naked moment from somebody that doesn't do that. But it gave a voice to something, because when you go through the editing process, you have to, it can't be this ramble. It can't be Rachel's ramblings. It's got to have some sort of consistency and cohesiveness, right? So it was a real internal moment of, what are you trying to say? What do you actually want to say? How can you write it down so that when somebody picks this book up, it comes across clearly, easily, and gives them that moment of relief to say, it gives you permission. I don't give anybody permission anything. You give yourself permission to suddenly look at things differently and not worry about being judged or about being considered slightly left field or lost in that moment with yourself. Because a lot of people, I think, nobody intends to be cruel. Everybody, I believe, I have to mentally survive, but I truly believe that everybody is doing the right thing. They're doing the best they can with the knowledge that they have in that moment. And I know there's that famous quote, you do your best until you know better, and then you do better. And I truly think that's what nobody wants to be seen as being cruel. Everybody cares deeply about their horses. They have to, because they're not easy creatures to have around, right? But what I see more, which unfortunately is interpreted by the horse as something negative, is confusion. People are confused. And I think more now, as we are all, I'm grouping that the royal we, the general we are on this crossroads of evolution, because there's so many ideas coming at them, so many techniques. There's the techniques that they've grown up with and that they have been educated by and that have served them well, not so much the horse perhaps, but certainly served them well. And then there's all this other ethical, empathetic, all of those words that create concern and self-judgment, because that sounds like I am not ethical and I'm not empathetic, but I am, but I just can't. Where do I go with this? And there's so many loud voices at the moment from both camps. They need to take a breath. They need to do some breath work and say, how can we collaborate on this? Or where is it we need to go with this? Because, like I said earlier, not one method, not one technique is right for every horse in every moment, because horses are individuals. And this is where the nature of your horse, of horses in general, the nature of the horses need to be horses. But your horse has a personality. Your horse has a life of experiences, of nurture, that has created the horse that you have in front of you right now. Method A might not work. Method B might not work. Method C might not work. But within each of those methods, something might work. Bringing all of that back to concentrate on the nature of your horse is going to help you filter all the other stuff that is not needed in that moment. And I think it frustrates me a little bit when all the ethical, empathetic side get on their soapboxes and do emotionally and mentally what they are criticizing the physical training side of doing. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. I have basically said a version of that before. That these people get so passionate, and I understand where it comes from. I feel it too, and I get angry at things I see too. But yeah, we, the horse, the human, we're here on earth, whether it's horses or not, we have to learn how to find our common ground. And that is, in many people's cases, horses, but there's so much division in the horse world that is going to be in all of our way, and
Absolutely.
I don't know, it makes me more frustrated when it's the ethical people doing it versus the ones that I would say are ill-informed or whatever. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
that's just me. That's just me.
But what happens is, who shouts loudest gets listened to, then somebody else shouts louder so they get listened to, layer upon layer upon layer. And these people, these incredible horse people that care so deeply, bring all that noise to their horses, and they can't find a path through. They can't put the foundations down because there's too much stuff, there's too much noise coming in from either side. So, today we're going to try this idea from this person, and tomorrow we're going to try this idea from that person. I saw that, and I saw this, and I saw the other. And it's all well-intentioned. There's no judgment here, because it happens to so many people. When the one being that can tell you is stood right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that will help everything make sense. And it will help you pick the things from horse person A that works for your horse and horse person B that works for your horse. Understanding the nature of your horse helps you do that and helps you drive through all of this white noise. You take all that noise into your horses emotionally, mentally. They get so frustrated that they will shut you out. And when they shut you out, they're not listening. And when they're not listening, you get frustrated, and that makes you not listen. And it turns into this spiral of conversation and dialogue that gets louder and louder and louder. Well, when horses get loud, they get dangerous. And then you're not safe. Bring it back down. bring it back to the simplest level that you can, where all the pieces fit more or less. Build a foundation based on the being that stood in front of you. Then you want to compete, you want to do dressage, you want to do working equitation, you want to do something else, you want to do nothing, then that's a different path from the fundamentals of understanding how your horse is, how your horse learns. Where is the threshold you can take your horse to where understanding is growing and where it is now too much? And that's different for every horse, like it is different for every human being. So, this horse can be stretched to here, but this horse can only be stretched to here. Well, there's no point taking all this information to a horse that can only take this now, for now.
Mm-hmm.
Understand your horse, please. Then go.
I think this is an interesting, I don't know if comparison is the right word. So I would completely agree that everything you're saying, like you have to know your horse and you have to ask your horse in your situation about, does this work or doesn't work, or am I doing a good job or a bad job? You do need to ask your own horse that question. But I would imagine that people come to your place that have their own horses and they can learn so much because those are real horses. And so many people are trying, like, I saw this thing and I want to connect with my horse and like learn about this. Like maybe they were in a typical sports competitive kind of a scenario. They want to learn it. Well, it's hard for them to learn it because they're trying to learn to read their horse and do all these connection and soft things with a horse that is really broken, and they didn't know it was broken.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They didn't know. And some of them may be lucky enough to come see your horses or whatever, something similar, and realize like mine could be like that. Like I didn't realize. You get so used to seeing these behaviors and bodies and actions and things like that. So as important as it is to know your horse, I think especially if you're going to dive into some of this stuff and you're in that other world, it is really helpful to have these experiences with different kinds of horses.
Absolutely.
For some people, it's remember what a real horse is like. For other people, it's literally the first time they would ever see what a real horse is like and how they communicate with people when they're not in that other world.
Yeah.
So, sorry, that was a little
Absolutely.
long-winded.
No, absolutely. It's jokingly call it rehorsing. Once whether they come here physically or we have a coaching session online, once we start talking about how their horses are communicating and how, more importantly, they're not communicating because they've had all of that knocked out of them. And it's not physical, not always physical. In fact, it's rarely physical. I have to say that yes, there's some cases that I deal with which are pretty difficult to stomach. Particularly, I love Spain. Spain is my home, but there are a few horses here that have been ex-bullfighting horses, and it's not, they have a lot to learn. They are learning, which is good. And I get very happy when they can contact me. But either way, a lot of it is not actually a physical broken. It's mentally and emotionally broken. So they have stopped communicating because they know they're not going to be listened to. And fundamentally, horses use the least amount of energy possible. That is not to say lazy. I find it really difficult when people, my horse is lazy. They're just not able to communicate or do what you're asking because they are so confused within the human world. But horses, naturally, their nature is to use as little energy as possible because the number one thought that they are having, consciously and subconsciously, 24/7, is, am I safe? And part of that safety is mental and emotional. And when they're not mental and emotional safe, they're going to shut down and they're going to lock you out. Part of that is a physical reaction is not possible because they are contained physically. So whether that is even in a fenced area or in a stable, because the overprotecting of horses, yes, can be very delicate and cost a lot of money, but let them be horses. Let them understand who they are so that they can communicate with the being that's in front of them, because this is a two-way thing. Every human being is different as every horse is different, and we have to start shedding some of our baggage to allow them to connect to the true being we are. That all sounds all a bit airy-fairy, but it is scientifically proven that connection is one of the most important things for both horses and human beings. But we live in a world of disconnect. We are so incapable of shedding the things that we bring to them that they can't get through to us either. If we are not able to show the horse, to understand who we are so we can show the horse who we are, they have nothing to connect to. Because they connect on a pure basis where our connections are far more abstract. They respond with instinct. They don't think and then respond. They feel and respond, understand what is going on, and then respond again, either changing the way they're going to have the next part of their conversation or continue. We go in there with our great big brains full of thoughts, thinking and not understanding that all of those thoughts take with us a conversation that the horse's instincts are picking up. We need to start understanding that by losing some of our need to control both thoughts and emotions and just turn up authentically, the horse has a much better place to come together with you. It's about understanding that actually fundamentally, if we could trust our instincts a little bit more, we would actually have a better communication with them on that level. And it takes you to this point of awareness and being aware of how you are. And I'm a great believer. People who often say, leave your emotions and your baggage at the gate, right? I fundamentally think that is a mistake. Because the first thing you do by leaving it there is turn up to the horse, not yourself, not honest. I truly believe if you go in as who you are, understand who you are, and if you're not feeling great that day, actually take that with you, but show them. But being aware of what that changes in the conversation, you will have a better relationship with your horse because they will be able to find it. And I think there's a fundamental difference between relationship and partnership. They are paths to the same end. You can have a fabulous relationship but a poor partnership, but you can't have a partnership without a fabulous relationship. Does that make sense?
I've never thought about the difference there. Say more. Let's go deeper into that.
Okay. Your relationship, when you have a really good relationship, you can have a great partnership. You can actually ask things and get them, and they can ask you and they get it, right? If you've got a poor relationship, your partnership is always going to be poor. So if you go back to that competition idea, competition, there's nothing wrong with competition if you have a great relationship, because competition is a partnership, or certainly should be.
Should be.
Yeah. And if you have a poor relationship or no relationship, it's not a partnership. That is dominance, it's control, it is demanding, it is coercion, it is learned helplessness to a certain degree. They give in, they're doing it, but they're not going to be doing it optimally or to their best because they don't have the fundamentals of a relationship. And this is what I was saying when I dealt with people that are competitors. Once they built their relationship back, once they start with their relationship and put their partnership on top of that, as opposed to the first thing they think about, the progress in their partnership side, the work side, if you like, is so great, and they have so much joy in it they come back and they say, I didn't realize that I could do that or my horse could do that. That was amazing. And we loved it together. We had joy together, and they enjoy it more. I think if we can shift the focus onto the relationship, and within that relationship is understanding the differences and understanding the similarities of who we are as creatures, as beings, as sentient beings, and celebrate that, as opposed to try managing those differences and looking at the horse as other. You tend to get very generalizing here, and I know it's dangerous to generalize, but there is my horse is mystic and my horse is my child. Okay? Which they're neither. They are a horse. It's not doing them any favors saying, I love my horses and they make me feel great. And I do think there's some joy in that. And there's science in mystery and there's mystery in science. And that's great. But don't make them into a mystical creature. Don't turn them into a mystical creature. And of course, they're not your child. They are not part of, they don't think and they don't function like a human being functions. And when we mix those up, we become inadequate for them. We're not respecting them as their own being. And I think, again, just to slightly touch when we were talking about the idea of all these ways of being, and another thing that I found is there is a process of thinking that takes away all responsibility from us as a human being because, it's mysterious. No, there's a reason for everything. You might not have the answer. You might not understand the answer. The answer might not actually even be available at this moment, but understanding the why something happens will help you get to the how you want it to be, right? And I find it frustrating when putting the horse into this mystic creature is basically saying, I don't want to find out why. And it is a complete lapse of responsibility.
I like how you put that about it's taking all the responsibility off of themselves. You can't just say, yeah, well, the horse is always right. The horse is always right. But we have to have a two-way. It can't be the horse being the only one talking either. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say.
And I think connected to that is the dangerous path that some people are put on, that boundaries are bad. The horse is always right. I can't tell them no because that will make me unethical or unkind. Or
I think some people twist it up as, if I say no, if I set that boundary, then I am harming my horse. I am being mean. I am being unethical. I'm not a good enough whatever. I think that's a whole thing that people go through too, Yeah.
But you know what's funny about that? It's actually does the horse more harm, because horses thrive in an environment of clarity. In a herd of horses, everybody knows more or less what they're doing, their plays, who is, gone are the days where there's one lead mare, that this horse is good at finding food, this horse is good at finding shelter, this horse is good at finding water, whatever. But within that, there is constant boundaries. You only have to be, one of the gifts of my life is being able to watch the whole process from introduction of mare and stallion to conception to birthing, all natural, all nature-based, no intervention. I'm pretty realistic. If I needed to, I would intervene. But I was always making sure that I was in a place that they could do it, big field breeding, no halter breed, nothing. I'm watching, in the first instance, the boundaries of the relationship between the mare and the stallion, and then watching the boundaries between the dam and the foal, and then watching the boundaries being set from the wider herd and the foals as they grow up. That, if somebody could just go through that alone, it would catapult their horsemanship their understanding of their horses so much, and understanding your place within that okay, yeah, boundaries don't have to be hard. Boundaries can be soft. Boundaries keep the horse safe within the horse environment and keeps you safe as the human being. It doesn't mean to say that you have to be controlling, aggressive, dominant about it. You have to be clear. A horse without clarity is a horse that's confused. A confused horse is a frustrated horse. A frustrated horse is a dangerous horse because they don't know where to be. And it's about, part of my work is about stepping outside of that spiral and returning to remembering that shared language, that shared understanding, because we have our boundaries to keep safe. And one of the first things I say to anybody who comes along is, okay, number one, your safety is the most important thing of any conversation that you have with your horses. That's not to say you need to be beating them away no, you just have to be aware of where you are in space and time, because they already know it. And I think we have to understand that boundaries, we could go on forever and talk about pressure, and it's part of life. It's part of life, not just domestic horses. The pressure that I studied a lot of wild and feral as part of my own education, my own development, my own growth. I mean, the pressure and release in some of these conversations is pretty outrageous. And I think the other thing is we need to be a little kinder to ourselves as well. Yeah, we're all doing the best that we can. And if we can just step outside of that constant pressure that we put on ourselves from all the noise that comes in from all quarters, yeah, we'd have a better relationship that would lead to a better partnership.
Horses could, as far as like with the right intentions and, if we want to say, energy behind it, a horse will forgive any technical error. When it comes to like our technique and our things like that, a horse will forgive any of that stuff when you're in that place with them. And so many people spend so much time learning that side of it, and it's like, gosh, you'd solve 90% of your problems if you focus on like what you said, on our end of it and our concern about what everybody thinks and what we think about ourselves and all that stuff. So many problems just solve themselves, and it gives you grace to solve any remaining problems in a lot of ways. Horses don't care about those mistakes at that point once they're seen.
Perfection has to be a happy accident, not a goal, because it's not attainable in reality. And our horses are not perfect either. And there's another thing that we do. We say, my horse is perfect. Yes, all my horses are perfect to me, but they're not perfect. It's not a reality of life. And when we're feeling that discontent, disconnect, doubt, worry, shame, guilt, all of those things all of that brings, I always ask my students and my clients to narrate how they're feeling when they're with their horses. So it goes back to don't leave it behind, bring it. But not just bring it. If it's really heavy, if you're really full of doubt, or you've made a mistake, you feel like you've done something and you think, oh God, I shouldn't have done that. I didn't release in time, or I asked one more time when I should have been satisfied. All of those things. Say it out loud and say it with conviction, because what the horse will do is they don't understand the individual word, but what they do understand is the energy and the intention behind the words that you speak. That will leave a relief in both of you. One, you're not holding it in, you're getting it out and releasing that, and you're going back to breathing, you're going back to relaxation, you're back in the moment. Let the universe take it away. You no point in holding on to it. It's the past. You've got to think about what's happening now. The horse is already in the now, and you're still banging on about what you've just done. But what they will do is pick up on that forgiveness that you give yourself, then they're ready and open to move on. And they don't hold it. That's not to say they don't have really good memories. And I come across a lot of horses that are holding a lot of stuff, damaged, traumatic, traumatized horses. But in your day-to-day reactions, don't worry, don't beat yourself up about the mistakes that you make. Only get a little concerned if you keep doing it.
Right. Yes.
'Cause,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah. All right. Now, this is the most important question of the day, by the way. If your fairy godmother gave you three wishes, we'll say horse-related wishes, but it doesn't have to be, but I suspect it'll end up going there one way or the other. So, your fairy godmother gave you three wishes. What would they be?
that people would slow down enough to really see the horse in front of them. I mean, really see it. Don't just look, see it. See every nuance of them to have a really good idea of the truth of it, not just the dream of it or what you think it should be, what your horse is telling you. Really slow down. Slow down. Everything's too rushed. For people to stop treating their horses as something separate and understand that we're both part of an amazing universe of beings, and we can actually not communicate in words, but communicate through energy and through intention, and recognize that instincts and awareness, that we share that's part of something that we share. If we could only remember, and that's important for me, I think.
You got to give us at least one selfish one, because that's a very for the universe, for the world, your
Yeah.
wishes so far. So let's give us
Okay.
one selfish one. What do you want?
That my horses would poo in one place, not so far away that I have to walk 1,000 miles with the barrow. There you go. But I tell you what, one thing that I really, really would wish for is a constant supply of nuts that then you didn't put weight on. There you go. Please give me a constant supply of any nut. If I became nut allergy, I think I'd struggle to survive.
I think I like that wish, except I'm not going to do it for nuts. I'm going to do it for like cheese and cracker type foods. Cheese, crackers, chips.
I'm a snack head, I'm afraid. Nuts,
Me too.
crisps, it's not exactly very organic, but whatever.
Parmesan crisps are my current
Wow.
addiction. Yeah, Parmesan crisps and tamarind bites. Have you ever had spicy tamarind bites? Wow,
No, but
it's
I can
delicious.
imagine. Yeah, I
So
like spice.
delicious.
I like spice.
Yes. A little spice, a little sweet, a little chewy. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, now I know we talked about your book. Before we go today, can you tell us how people can connect with you?
Okay, so you can find me at the website rewild.windchaserranch.com. There's lots of information on there about who I am, what I do, including how to buy the book, which is available on Amazon and also on Lulu. It's also available in Spanish. I translated it into Spanish so if anybody's listening to this and would like to read it in Spanish. As well as that, I have obviously on Facebook and on Instagram, you can find me, just Rewild Your Horse Spirit. Rachel Windchaser. If you just put Rachel Windchaser, you will find everything. I'm on social media. I do have a Facebook group called the Rewilding Circle, and I do share in there free. It's I share a lot in there, helping people, and I usually go live maybe once a week. So it's a really good space to ask questions. There's lots of really good minds in there as well, not just mine. So I really like that. And YouTube, Windchaser Ranch, a lot of videos. All my lives from the group are on YouTube under little podcast type tab. a lot of free stuff. So yeah, and I do one-to-one coaching. So if people wanted to contact and really work through these conversations that they're having with their horses and get a better understanding on focus problems, or I do group coaching as well. We just finished the Theatre Freedom. I had a Theatre Freedom program going with a small group. Everything's small. Everything I do is really intimate. 6 to 10 people. I don't like big groups. I don't think you get enough out of me, or I don't get enough out of you. And so we did the Theatre Freedom, because fear is something that comes up again and again with so many people. They love their horses, but they're frightened of them, and they don't understand how just changing some pathways can really change the way that they see that. And my next project is going to be the Rule of Three, and it's a horsemanship from nature approach to decision making. So where we look at how horses simplify choices, where we complicate them, and they're using observation and body awareness and relationship-based communication. So it's really good for people who overthink around horses. And if they want a clearer, something that makes more sense to them. So yeah, that's called the Rule of Three, and that's going to be launched next month. I'm going to be in Mijas in Malaga in the south of Spain for a horsemanship from nature clinic. And that again is 6 to 8 people, really tight group. You don't need to bring a horse. There's horses available. So if anybody fancies some sun, from the 15th to the 17th of May weekend, then again on the website you can find out more details about that. And then I'm doing
Awesome.
an alternative colt starting. It's all in Spanish though. It's a Spanish thing, also down south. Amazing idea of showing how you can start. When they say colts here, they're talking about 4 or 5 year olds. So a good age to start educating, and an alternative way. And it's not about time. It's not a competition. And I said, well, as long as people like to watch paint dry, I'm happy to attend, because not a lot will happen. And he's the guy that's organising it is trying to do what we're all trying to do, get more voice to, you don't have to do it that way. So yeah,
Nice.
the website, and like I say, the book's on there. And and more than you can contact me from there. So always happy to answer questions and ask them.
Well, thank you so much. You have a lot of cool stuff going on, and I have loved seeing what you post and all of that. So I think people will enjoy your pages and your beautiful horses too.
Thank you, Tamara. It's been a pleasure. Been a real pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed the show. Remember to click follow or subscribe, rate the show, and share with a friend. Visit TamaraLeeBarrett.com for more info on coaching, consulting, and links to our socials. Until next time, happy horsing.